There's something eerie about walking into a house and seeing everything, every single thing, out of place. You'd think the house belonged to someone who was just moving in, but no. The owners were well off, with expensive furniture, art on the walls, and a garden that could make any village jealous. Yet, everything felt wrong. It felt like it had been lived in but never truly lived in. That's how I knew something was off. But let me take you back. I met Nneka when I was just starting my career as a young journalist. I'd heard of her before. Who hadn't? She was one of the wealthiest girls in our area, always seen driving around in fancy cars, wearing the latest trends, and living a life that many of us could only dream of. But there was something about her that always made me uneasy. I first saw her at a charity event, speaking confidently, smiling like she owned the place. But her eyes, they were different. I had never seen someone's eyes hide so much. It was as though she had a secret, a dark, twisted one she wasn't sharing with anyone. A few weeks after that event, I ran into her again, this time in a cafe. I was surprised when she sat next to me. There was no awkward introduction, she just started talking as if we had been friends for years. She told me about her life, her wealth, her family. But it wasn't her wealth that struck me. No, it was the way she kept fidgeting with her hands, always reaching for things, her phone, the salt shaker, even her cup, just to hold onto them for a moment before quickly putting them back. It was subtle, but I caught it. Later that day, I got a text from her. It wasn't unusual, I thought. She was friendly, so why not? But the message wasn't what I expected. It was an apology. I didn't mean to seem rude earlier, I just can't stop myself, she wrote. Sometimes, I take things, even when I don't want to. At first, I thought she was joking. But when I met up with her again, things started to make sense. Nneka was a kleptomaniac. She confessed it to me one evening, over drinks. She told me how, despite her wealth, she couldn't stop taking things, anything, really. A necklace from a party, a watch from her mother's dresser, a pen from a hotel lobby. It didn't matter. It was like an uncontrollable urge, and no one knew. No one, except me. It got worse. Nneka's relationships were a mess. She'd been with some of the richest and most powerful men in the city, but none of those relationships lasted. Why? Because they couldn't accept her for who she really was. No one could. They saw her wealth, her beauty, and thought that was enough. But it wasn't. They didn't see the girl who was constantly battling her own mind, trying to keep herself from slipping up again. And again. And again. One day, she told me about a man she met who actually accepted her. His name was Chijioke. He wasn't rich, didn't care about her wealth, and most importantly, he didn't judge her. He just loved her. At first, I didn't believe it. Who could love someone who couldn't control their own impulses? But there was something in the way she spoke about him, soft, almost vulnerable, that made me pause. Maybe, just maybe, he was different. But it wasn't easy. Nneka had stolen from him, too. Little things. A scarf here, a wallet there. But Chijioke never got mad. He just let it slide. They tried to work through it together. I think that's when I started to see Nneka differently. She wasn't a villain. She was someone trapped in her own mind, someone trying to break free from a part of herself that was slowly destroying everything she cared about. One night, she invited me over to their house. They had just moved in together, and she wanted me to see how well they were doing. But when I walked in, I felt that same unsettling feeling, the feeling of something out of place. The house was beautiful, no doubt about it. But there was something wrong. I was sitting on the couch, waiting for Nneka to come back from the kitchen, when I saw it. A small, delicate necklace hanging on the coffee table. I didn't say anything. But when Nneka returned, I watched her glance at it and immediately grab it, her fingers trembling. Chijioke came in right after, and he didn't seem to notice. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I looked at Nneka and asked, "Did you take this?" Her face went pale, and for a second, I thought she was going to run. But instead, she just sat down beside me, tears in her eyes. "I'm trying. I really am," she whispered. "But it's harder than you think." Chijioke sat down next to her, took her hand, and said something I'll never forget, "We'll get through this together. We've always gotten through things together." And in that moment, I realized something. It wasn't about her stealing. It was about the love they had, the kind of love that didn't judge or run away. Chijioke wasn't perfect, but he accepted her imperfections. Together, they found a way to deal with it. Slowly, she started to get better. It wasn't a quick fix, and I don't think it ever fully went away, but she was trying. For the first time, she was fighting the urge, and Chijioke was there, always beside her. I don't know how it ended, whether she completely conquered her need to steal or not. But I know one thing, some people are harder to understand than others, and sometimes, the best thing you can do is just stand by them and let them find their own way. As I left that house that day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still lacking in the shadows. Something was still wrong. But maybe, just maybe, love could fix what was broken. Even if that love came with a price. The real question is, how much are you willing to give up to help someone you care about? Would you stand by them, no matter what? Or would you let them go because their demands are too much to handle? That's the real horror of it all.